Is it a healthy love story? A presentation about recognizing healthy and unhealthy relationships. "85% of domestic violence victims are women." 70% of women murdered by an intimate partner had never reported any abuse to the police. 6 million. It's the estimated number of children who annually witness some form of domestic violence. 1 in every 5 female high school students report being physically or sexually abused by a dating partner. 1 in every 4 women will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. 1 in every 3 Americans say they know a woman who has been physically abused by her husband or boyfriend in the past year. The number 1 cause of injury to women is domestic violence. Throughout this presentation, I would like you to think about qualities that you believe you want in your healthy relationships. I also would like you to consider what you think is an unhealthy relationship. And what are some of the forms of abuse in relationships? And how can they manifest themselves? And how can they be stopped? Throughout our lives, we are involved in many different kinds of relationships. We have friendships, romances, work and school-related connections, family ties, and quite often, relationships that defy categorization. Each of these situations have the potential to enrich us, adding to our feelings of self-worth, enjoyment, and growth. And on the other hand, sometimes these situations we can find ourselves being uncomfortable. It can be difficult to come to the realization that a lover, friend, colleague, or a family member is not treating us with the respect we deserve. Keep in mind that in all kinds of kinships, there is likely to be some kind of disagreement, a need for compromise, and times of frustration. These alone do not necessarily indicate that a relationship is unhealthy. However, there are some things to think about when considering whether a particular bond is a healthy one for you or not. What are some qualities of a healthy relationship? Well, there are many, but the foundation is based off respect. Respect means that you and your partner show value to each other. It includes respecting individuality, embracing differences, and allowing each other to be themselves. It also includes respecting each other's need for privacy and their boundaries, sexual, personal, and etc. It's important that we consider how our behavior affects the ones we care about. So being understanding is a key quality of a healthy relationship. Traits, ways that you can express understanding is to discuss things, allow for there to be differences, understand their feelings, compromise equally, and listen. Expressing and listening to each other's feelings and needs is the key way to understand and gain intimacy in any relationship. In all healthy relationships, we have many responsibilities, but first and foremost, our number 1 responsibility is to love and take care of ourselves and our general well-being. That is the number 1 thing. Now that we've discussed some qualities of a very healthy relationship, now we need to consider what's unhealthy. Some key factors, and these are not exclusive, are jealousy, lack of trust, lack of respect to the partner's right to privacy, physical violence, hitting, kicking, stabbing, punching, biting, or pushing. Sexual abuse or harassment, including forcing someone to have sex, touching someone in ways he or she does not like, and not respecting someone's physical space, is absolutely unhealthy in a relationship. this brings us to the topic of domestic violence. Well, what is domestic violence? Domestic violence is a pattern of many behaviors directed at achieving and maintaining power and control over an intimate partner, such as physical violence, emotional abuse, isolation of the victim, economic abuse, intimidation, and coercion and threats. According to the CDC, it's defined as the willful intimidation, physical assault, battery, sexual assault, and/or other abusive behaviors perpetrated by an intimate partner against another. So, who ends up in a domestic abusive relationship? Not me, you think? Well, unfortunately, anyone can end up in an abusive relationship. It is an epidemic affecting individuals in every community, regardless of age, economic status, race, religion, nationality, even educational background. It appears awareness is the most effective measure to reduce these cases. Domestic violence results in physical injury, psychological trauma, and sometimes even death. The consequences of domestic violence truly do last a lifetime. One common misunderstanding about domestic violence is that it's believed that you will see the violence, the abuse, in bruises, cuts, abrasions, and whatnot. Unfortunately, abuse comes in many forms, such as verbal, emotional, sexual, economic, peer pressure, minimizing, blaming, denying, and threats and isolation and jealousy. So how do we recognize these things? Well, some examples would be the following. For verbal abuse, things like, you're so stupid and lazy, or you're never going to get anywhere in life. Those are things called verbal abuse. That is not showing respect. Emotional abuse would be saying stuff that makes you less than. No one's ever going to want you. I'm all you've got. Those are things that kind of really control you emotionally. Sexual abuse is when you're controlled sexually. I don't care what you want, you're mine, or you're doing this, or I don't like you. Economic abuse goes along with all of them if they make more money. I make the money, so I make the rules. Then there's the peer pressure, which is more common with the adolescents. This correlates with the sexual abuse as well. That's what everybody else is doing. Let's do it. Then there's the minimizing or denying. That's with the guy saying that bruise is not a big deal, or what I said isn't that big of a thing. You're just being sensitive. You understand. How dare you get so upset? Those are minimizing and denying. It's also called gaslighting. Then you have the blaming, intimidation. If you hadn't gone out with my friends, I would not have acted like that. Or if you break up with me, I will do this or that. And isolation and jealousy. Where are you? Who are you with? Why are you doing that? Those are all signs of the unseen abuse. And they are causes for concern, and they are a pattern. As mentioned in the last slide, abuse happens in patterns. It's often common that the abuser will apologize after the abuse and treat their partner with a special care. Unfortunately, the most common pattern is that at first it takes a little while that the abuse happens, but over time, that time in between shortens and the abuse occurs faster and faster. The key is if you're in a relationship that includes any of the type of behaviors mentioned today, it is important you talk to somebody, a counselor, and you get help. Speak to a professional and or adult. Many times people from the outside wonder, well, if the relationship is unhealthy, why are they in it? Well, that's because ending an unhealthy relationship can be extraordinarily difficult and very dangerous. The number one time of violence in any domestic abusive situation, is actually when the relationship ends. That is when the abuser will most likely act out. So the most important, number one key thing about ending an unhealthy relationship, and I cannot reiterate this enough, is to create a safety plan and make it clear. Where will you be? Who are you going to contact? What's your next step? You need to have all these things in effect. In order to do this properly, you need to speak to a professional. Get the advice from a professional. Consider where you're going to be located. Do not be mean and belittling. It's just going to trigger them. So be kind. Be prepared for their reaction. They're not going to be happy. But if they get abusive, have that plan ready. Be prepared. Go to a safe location afterwards that they're not going to know about. And make sure you're safe. I mean really safe. And get as much support as you need. There is no timeline that you're supposed to follow in order to get better. These things have an effect and they do hurt. You will get better, but it takes time and it takes support. Trust me, I've been there. Throughout history, love stories have not exactly shown the most healthy of relationships. Perhaps the most important thing you can do is trust your own instincts. Each and every one of us deserves to feel safe, valued, and cared for. Keep in mind that the most strongest signs of a healthy relationship is that you both feel good about yourself. And the most important thing is to treat yourself with self-respect and believe in your right to be treated well. Be the director of your own love story. Don't follow everyone else.